We've had 2 fantastic days of the RIAI Annual Conference. We're absolutely thrilled both with the content of the conference, the programme that we've been able to deliver, the variety of speakers that we've had, but also really importantly for us, the engagement from the members. The 2 themes that we've selected for the conference, collaboration being the overall one, designing and delivering buildings now is increasingly complex and it is no one party is involved in it. And then today was obviously looking at retrofitting. We all know the challenge that Ireland and the globe faces in dealing with climate. So we have to look at how we build new buildings better, but critically how we deal with our existing building stock.
We need to have that cross-sectoral discussion and interaction and engagement between all of the disciplines that bring about the delivery of the built environment. A forum like this sometimes can be just the starting point, to set those relationships up. One of the key things I think is coming out of this is enabling or facilitating situations to arise where we can have conversations, where we're designing through conversation and through exchange of ideas, identifying ways that we can address the challenges.
Well, I love coming to this conference because it's a very broad church when you come here. It seems to me that looking around, there are architects from all kinds of practice. There are people involved in planning and conservation. There are architects working in public service. There are architects coming from private practice. And often when I'm speaking to architects, it's relatively select audiences. And it felt today as though there was a really broad group of people who were participating in this. The speakers this morning, they were talking about architecture in a completely different way to the way that I talk about it. And I'm coming away learning a lot from that experience. I think that creativity for me is about opening yourself out to what other people know that you don't know, or the kind of challenges that people can put to you that bring you outside your own patterns of thought.
In 1976, 49% of architects used to work in the public sector in the UK. And in 2017 that was down to less than 1%. So Public Practice is a not-for-profit organisation and we build the capacity and skills of the public sector because we really believe that by doing that we can improve the quality and sustainability of places. What we heard today was really inspiring to see what Ireland is doing in terms of those architectural skills in-house, and the situation in the UK is quite different, so we've been trying to bring those skills back in-house and enable local authorities to think in a sort of longer term view and include those design skills in that creative thinking.
Well, I'm really enjoying this year's conference, I have to say. I've learned something from every speaker. The project I spoke about with Sabrina Decker is the Dominic Street Lower Retrofit project. The new development, Dominic Hall, that was just finished at the end of 2022, represents the absolute, an apex in terms of construction and design for public housing. The blocks across the road, when they were constructed at the end of the 1960s, they were also the apex for their day. They were wonderful once, why can't they be wonderful again? And so I'm really looking forward to me and the team learning how do we retrofit a flat block of this type the least invasive way possible, measuring the carbon cost of the works and seeing how we can minimise that and actually turning them into really attractive homes.
Conference is a wonderful opportunity to network, to see new ideas, to hear from other people what they've done, what problems they've encountered and what kind of solutions they have found to get around it. It also sets the agenda, it sets the ambition. I think that architects are key in terms of envisaging the future for Ireland. What kind of world do we want to live in? Our objective is that we have buildings that people can live in. They will be healthy because there won't be particulate matter coming out from their heating systems. They'll be healthy, they'll be comfortable, and they'll be very moderately priced in terms of being warm in the winter and cool in the summer. They'll be efficient, they will be contributing, for example, to the energy system by producing electricity, where people can produce and use their own electricity and sell the excess to the grid, or store it as the case may be. They'll be recycling grey water, for example, so that we won't have difficulties in terms of times of drought. So buildings will be much more active part of our society and of our living area, and that's one of the directions of travel that's hugely important that architects will take the lead on.
I'm here to talk about Park Hill. It was planned as a kind of city in itself. It had everything you'd need. It had schools, it had shops, it had pubs and playgrounds, When I moved to Sheffield in the late 80s to study architecture, it was already considered a failure. It was listed in 1998. Urban Splash won the tender to redevelop it. They had a 2-week competition where they gave us all a flat, and the interview was to invite the jury into our flat and show them what we'd done. And the first thing we did was do this frieze, which described our approach, which was from the front, Park Hill's going to look like a new, more cleaned up version of Park Hill. And as it turns the corner, you start to see individual homes where people live. It's the upfront embodied carbon that we got quite excited about, which shows a 61% improvement. The operational carbon and the upfront embodied carbon of this building, I think, just proves that we should be considering retrofit of buildings, even if we can't make them kind of passive house standards.
So we've been looking at how material passports can enable material reuse. Essentially, by knowing more information about a material, you can de-risk reuse. And the ultimate goal is to reuse as much material that we already have in existence. So it's not just about gathering data, future materials for a future deconstruction. It's about looking at the built environment here and now and figuring out how we can reuse more instead of sending it to landfill. The idea of reusing as much as possible starts with that retrofit and refurbishment concept. So we have a lot fewer clients coming in the doors asking for new build. Most of them want to start looking at a refurbishment-led scheme initially. Sometimes we can't retrofit a building. Not all buildings are suitable. They need to have good bones, they need to have good floor-to-ceiling heights, they have to have structural capacity, they have to be safe for reuse. So if the concrete structure is failing, then you may end up spending more carbon doing structural acrobatics than actually, developing a good building at the end of it. I see a huge amount of passion in the industry. I've seen a lot of change, even in my relatively short career. There's a big step change in how people are approaching design. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed in the morning if I wasn't hopeful about the future.
I wanted to share some of our initiatives from Snøhetta on projects that where we've collaborated throughout the value chain of the building industry to create really spearheading sustainable projects. Yeah, it is being curious on finding new solutions through what used to be a traditional design, for instance. Doing natural climatized building, trying to find low-tech solutions, clever material choice, studying how did we actually build and construct buildings previously with more wooden architecture, at least from Norway, where I'm from. With 600 in the audience here and 400 online, it's really inspirational that you can also meet and greet. You can see the industry, see the presentations out here in the hall, and meet people and have discussions through inspirational keynotes and debates, which perhaps then pushes your own perspective and you learn through debating with others that you meet here. So that's valuable.
My talk was covering the climate challenge and retrofit in construction. And those are two really big challenges. And I guess my message was to bring optimism. There are solutions, we know the answers, but also I think an element of consideration about how complicated and difficult it is. So my aim is to sort of say, we're going to have to work hard at this, but it's well worth it when you get to the end.
Well, we've just been at the panel on diversity and inclusion, and the panel discussion was fascinating. We heard papers on the history of women in architecture from Carol Pollard, and then Dervla McManus speaking about her own research into the views of women who are now working as architects, and in particular how they viewed gender in the profession. So some fascinating findings, really bearing out what we have found to be the case also for women in politics and in the legal profession, my own profession.
Well, the atmosphere has been absolutely tremendous over the last 2 days. It is those conversations that are happening on the sidelines, of hearing the stories of what is happening in people's working lives, of seeing people reconnect, developing new business opportunities. So it is really that buzz of people coming together that haven't been together in quite a considerable length of time.